What are meta programs and how can you use them to persuade people? I received this question a few weeks ago, sorry for delay in responding. The question was, I am most interested in characterizing people based on matching style, so one of the meta programs, and the style which looks at what a person focuses on, another one, and how these frames can be utilized in conversation and persuasion. I am not a big fan, I would say, of meta programs and just personality types in general, not because I think they don't work or not useful, but just because I have seen so many psychologists and wannabe psychologists trying to make any person fit into this category of the personality type, whereas any personality type like categorization like meta programs is always like a threshold. You always like variate between one polarity and the other, and certain life events can alter how you react to this or that type of events and how you make this or that type of decision. Or the exposure to a model, when you are exposed to somebody's thinking, you may alter your own thinking and your personality based on just matching and mirroring the person you are listening to. So I don't really believe those things are stagnant, and I know people in NLP usually are aware of that, but people from the world of psychology, quite often they don't know about it. So that's kind of my beef with meta programs and any kind of, or the MBTI personality test and stuff like that. But if you're aware that people can definitely change and that you shouldn't try to put them in a box at all times, then definitely it is a good tool to use. A simple definition of meta programs for those who don't really know about it. Meta programs are about what do I, or somebody else, what do I choose as a priority when I make any decision in my life, even an unconscious one. So whenever a choice is being presented, even something you have to decide in a split second, your brain will automatically go through some filters for how do I choose the right decision, for how to respond, how to behave, how to act about this or that. Those invisible filters are what in NLP are called meta programs. We are going to go in this video through some examples of different meta programs and how to adapt to each of them. As a general rule of thinking, if you're not really sure of which meta programs somebody is using, how to influence them, as a general rule of thinking, just use the exact same words they used, like we were, trained in school. When you have a question being asked, you have to take again the part of the question and then give your reply. That is basically the same idea. If you always take again the same exact words the person used and then complete the sentence with your answer, you are pretty much following their meta programs anyway in doing so. If you want to uncover somebody's meta programs, the ones in this video or any other ones, you just ask them, what are you the most motivated by in life? Even for yourself, just think about right now in your current life setup, what is the one thing that motivates you the most? And that thing will definitely unveil many meta programs that may be completely unconscious, and you may not even be aware that you go through this and that and this filter to make a decision about what to chase, what to be compelled by, and what to just ignore and dismiss. Among the most famous meta programs, we have the match versus mismatch meta program that was outlined in the comment. The matching is when somebody, when you are giving to them an explanation, so you go into a seminar about NLP and they want to figure out how NLP works, their main way of thinking will be, what is it similar to? Oh, what do I already know that is an example that is linked with NLP, if it is the thing I am studying. On the other polarity, we have mismatch people, which are commonly referred to as polarity responders also, which is the people who always contradict. Whatever you have to say, they find the exception. They find the counterexample. They say, yes, but this. Yes, but what about that? Oh, I disagree because. And even if there is a rapport, even if you have a good feeling with those people, they will find a way to just say the one thing that is a perfect counterexample to your way of thinking, to your explanations. An old joke in the NLP world was, okay, when you have a polarity responder, just always say the opposite of what you want to say to make them agree. I would say that is not necessarily the greatest option, because if they actually say yes for once, then you may be in deep shit. But what I personally applied that to was using a few questions or enumerating a few options when discussing with a person and noticing if they keep saying, no, it's not going to work, no, you shouldn't do this. That is one of my clues for that person just doesn't need to belong in my life. When somebody is always contradicting, at some point, you can also just distance yourself from that person, because they may not bring anything valuable anyway in your life. Otherwise, if you really need it, if you are required to keep that person because it is at work, it is a colleague, you can't just fire them. In that case, I would say to always ask for their opinion first before you enumerate yours, always. That way they won't really have a chance to contradict, because they have already gave their counter indication. So in many cases you may even be you may even agree with them, but if you let them speak first, then they won't have anything to contradict, because you may actually agree in the end. But if you had said one thing, your opinion first, they will say the opposite just because it is their way of thinking. Next, we have a pretty common in performance related coaching, evaluating if the person is more a toward type, personality, or an away from. Toward people always look for the possibilities, what can be achieved, what is possible, what is doable, what else can we try, what else can we be compelled about. And the away from person only focuses on what's going wrong. What do we need to take care of and go away from? On a simpler explanation, we have people who are motivated by more pleasure, tend to be motivated by more pleasure, and people who tend to be more motivated by getting away from pain. I would say it is kind of a warning signal if the person in their entire life are only motivated by escaping pain. I would say there is probably some kind of trauma being held here, because I would say a well-balanced person will, same thing, be one time this, one time that. They will tend to have both choices at their disposal. Sometimes they will be compelled, sometimes they will try to get away from pain. If somebody is 100% focused on pain all the time, I would say this is a heavily traumatized person, and we need to, in that case, to elaborate what is it specifically they are running away from in their life story. Not even about the topic of conversation you are maybe discussing right now, but what else in their life has been getting them in that such alert sensory system, always trying to look out for what's dangerous. What in their life happened that made them always on the lookout like this. Next, we have known as the locus of control, I think, in psychology. Do you use yourself, your own judgment as a referent, or do you tend to use consciously more people's opinions before making your own? Even if we obviously are all conditioned by group thinking when we are in a group, naturally social norms are being established and we tend to think like this person because it is just a natural mirroring. But this meta program is even about conscious choices. When you ask a person and whatever you ask to them, they say, well, I know I should do this because my mom told me, or I know I should do this because this teacher told me, because this coach has been talking about it. Even consciously, even out loud, not deep inside their thinking, but even out loud, they will only mention what other people told them instead of saying, I want. Unfortunately, it is more common, I think, in women who sometimes have been raised, trained to just put people's needs before theirs. So many times I have seen women having trouble to reconnect themselves to what they really want and stop always using the desires of somebody else to validate their own. But it can happen to anybody. For this one, I would say to be more patient with somebody who is only based on other people, what do other people think instead of me. You may be more patient and give them some room for speaking, because what this meta program, in my opinion, often comes from is an insecurity. I can't validate my own thinking, my own judgment, so I just let others speak before me. That way, they will make a decision. However, from experience with those people, once you shut down a bit and you let them express themselves more, at some point they do. At some point they do mention what they really want. In the beginning, when there are many people around, they may just naturally shut down themselves because they are just trying to do this. And for somebody who is only self-referent, only me all the time, I would suggest to use two language patterns. The first one is known in the Milton model, the quote, quoting something else, and in the sleight of mouth model, what is called changing the frame size, broadening the scope of attention to other details in the frame at hand. The reason I say that is people who are just centered on themselves all the time, or non-stop, what they lack sometimes is just listening to others' opinions, and not from maybe not even from an egotistical point of view, but they may not even know that it does exist people who don't think like them. They may even be ignorant about that. They may not even be aware it is actually possible to have an opinion different than theirs. However, if you go into confrontation with those people about, I believe this, you shouldn't believe that, that is kind of a no-go in my opinion. However, quoting somebody else, so, I respect your opinion, Robert, and I just want to point your attention to what Einstein said, or anybody else, about this. That way you broaden the scope of attention to, oh, there is an alternative. And slowly you can maybe make a compromise. That person wants this, and because they want it, because they have decided, because they are the most important thing in the world. Well, yes, you are, and at the same time, you have alternative ways of seeing the world, according to Einstein, according to whoever, and could we make a compromise about it? That is an easier way, I think, of negotiating with those people than confronting them right away with, no, you believe this, but I believe that, so we should listen to me. Don't go there with those people. Next, we have another example, the buying decision. When you are in sales or in copywriting, we have people as customers who prioritize money, like how much does it cost, and they only make their decision based on how much it is going to cost to them. That is more common in people who come from a really low, really poor background, who suffered from poverty. They may be more stressed out just about the price. Then you have people more concerned about the ease, the comfort, like is it going to require any difficulty, any willpower on my own. When you sell something, it is usually a bad idea to sell it with the argument, you're going to have to put your ass here and work out extremely hard. Many people won't really enjoy that because they want the least amount of effort to make a product succeed for them. And then you have people who prioritize how fast are they going to get results with the product they will purchase. As a general rule in copywriting, on a text to sell something online, usually the rule is to incorporate a bit of each of them. So it is artificial because any price is artificial anyway. Nothing is expensive, nothing is cheap anyway. It is only depending on what do you compare it to. Obviously, somebody who comes from a really poor background will only compare with very, very low prices because they have been used to only look at low prices. Somebody who comes from a more higher social class will maybe only base their judgment on ease and comfort because they already have money, so now they are more more focused on will I improve the enjoyment in my life rather than can I save money on this. On a sales page, you can just incorporate a bit of all of them. That will satisfy most customers anyway. And one last example that I like, people who are more competitive, they only want to win, they only want the victory for themselves, and the people who are more cooperative, so they want a win-win situation. Usually in business schools, they teach the students to look for a win-win situation, because in sales or in negotiation, we usually say that, even from experience, that if you only try to win yourself, you may succeed, but in many cases that won't last a whole lifetime, because when people, or at some point people just realize they have been losing in that negotiation, if you kind of try to play with their mind with some scammy thing, you may succeed, but they will at some point realize what you did and they may distance themselves and provoke a bad word of mouth around them to avoid purchasing what you sell. So usually in a business context, we look more for a win-win situation, and if it is not in your natural perception, you can definitely learn to act, to behave differently, to think differently. Again, just simple exposure to a model who thinks like this can be enough to alter your own way of thinking, at least in a specific context. You can think cooperative in a business context and only think competitive in a sports context if you really enjoy the competition. That's fine. You can just alter based on where you are. If you really want a complete overview of all the meta programs and how to use each of them, my best bet as a book would be the Unlimited Power book by Tony Robbins. There is a whole chapter on meta programs. I think it is chapter 15 or like toward the end of the book. There is a complete chapter with only 7 meta programs, if I remember correctly, which is great because I think he has already summarized to what was the most relevant to look for in any situation. Then if you're really a nerd with that, which is not a bad thing, but you're going to spend much more time on this in that case, there is the book, The Source Book of Magic by Michael Hall, and page 209, I noted, yeah, page 209, you have literally all the meta programs you can think of. I think he even published a book called Figuring Out People, where it's like a 400 pages book where you have literally every possible distinction. To me, that is kind of an overload. I don't think you need that much to study and understand people around you, but that can be stimulating for you to dig into that book once in a while to figure out, oh, this person I could not communicate with, what are that person's meta programs and how can I better communicate next time with him or her or any person who looks like them. But I would just not recommend this one from a simplicity perspective. Just take the Tony Robbins one, it will be more than enough. Basically, if you want to use meta programs, as a conclusion, what is the main situation you want to influence people into? Is it a sales situation? Is it people from your direct entourage? Are they friends? Are they your family? Be careful about this, by the way. Are they people at work? Are they in a dating context? What is the main context in which you want to use meta programs, in which you want to influence people into? In that context, for the specific people you want to influence, next, think about what is the best personality that is the most agreeable, the easiest to work with. If it is a customer in a business context, who is your dream customer? What is the exact personality? What are the specific meta programs your dream customer has, if it is a business context? And then what specific questions could you ask to unveil those main personality traits or those main meta programs? What are the questions you might ask them other than what usually motivates you in life in general? That may be a bit tricky to ask that on a cold calling to somebody, but what are the questions you may ask somebody, or like stories you might tell and notice how they react to see if they are more mismatch, if they are more self-referent or more cooperative oriented. You just want to elaborate how close is that person from the real client I want to work with, or the kind of woman I want to date, or the whatever, and notice how close they are or how far away they are. Because in the end, when you deal with people, it is a numbers game anyway. You may need to meet many people before finding the person you want to work with or date or anything. And it is easier once you have clarified in your head what specifically am I looking for. In that sense, I think meta programs are more interesting to study, more than how do I persuade, because if it is strictly about persuasion, I would say drift more toward a sleight of mouth. I think it is a better, faster and more effective bet to study sleight of mouth than meta programs, which is kind of a less intrusive, less direct way of influencing people.